Hello and welcome to the MMQB podcast. I'm Conor. We got Albert Breer here.
That wasn't a beer can, by the way.
Right. That's Albert. It's Coors Light time.
I guess we got to plug Polar Seltzer here. I have about like 12 of these a day. So I may feel like having a beer right now, but I'm not having one yet.
I know it is Black Monday. This is one of the crazier reporting days in the world. Albert and I are both we're both feeling the crunch. I recently got into
Locked in.
I recently got into sparkling water as well, but then my wife and I hit like a panic. So we got really into Pellegrino, and then because they sell it in Costco in the big 18 packs for like $20. Mm-hmm. But now there's like, apparently Pellegrino is not good for you. There's uranium in the Pellegrino.
Is that right? Like Polar Seltzer is actually really good because it's like, there came a point where I was like drinking a lot of, like I drank Pepsi or Coke or whatever when I was a kid. And then when I got out of college, I cut back to diet soda, but I would drink so much of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was like, this probably isn't very good for me. So I think it was like when I want to say like when I had we had our first kid or maybe after our second, I was like, I got to do things to kind of like generate energy and like be healthier. And so one of them was switching over to Polar Seltzer, which my wife was already drinking. And Polar Seltzer's sweet because like the cans get colder than bottles, you know?
Agreed. Yes.
You know, so like when you put it in the fridge, you got like the ice cold seltzer waiting for you. It's kind of does some of the stuff that soda would do for you without all the health detriments, right?
Yeah. Well, we're just trying to survive at this point. You know, sports writing was never what you would consider the healthiest profession.
All you had to do was look around the press box back in the day.
Yeah, we're up late. We're up early, and we're just kind of staring at phones and computers all day. But it's a labor of love. I will say. So we're going to break down all of Black Monday. We're going to get into some of the consequential games from Sunday Night Football, and then Matt and Gilberto are going to give you a first look at the playoffs on Thursday. But I have to say, I got a little bit of a bone to pick. We're filling out our season awards, and editor Mitch Goldich, Albert, said I'm not allowed to make Damar Hamlin comeback player of the year.
So Mitch hates Damar Hamlin?
Yeah, so Mitch
like the story.
is just massively against Damar Hamlin.
I didn't know that. It's good to it's something good to know. You know what I mean? Like when you're assessing people's character and stuff, good to know.
First of all, like he should have won it last year. He wasn't
eligible, wasn't it? Or there's something weird with that, right?
He only played he didn't play a lot of snaps. And I will say this, because you remember when Sean McDermott ran the fake snap to him in that game? If that converted, I bet, you know, like let's say he runs for 40 yards or whatever it is. That is a story of a lifetime. And then Damar Hamlin's comeback player of the year. But now he's played a lot this season. He's had to play a lot this season. He's been a valued member of a much turned around Bills team. So it's like, why don't we just give him the award now? But Mitch says no. So,
and in a major position of need too, because they were moving on from Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde. I mean, man.
But I will say this, Eagles
What's
fan.
Mitch's standard here? Like you come back from death or something?
Eagles fan Mitch Goldich has no problem with me voting for Jordan Mailata for MVP, which I did. So,
wow.
So the fix is in, you know.
Mailata's an interesting pick. Nothing against Jordan Mailata, is a great player, but are you trying a little too hard there, Connor?
I think every year I usually put the best offensive lineman. Like if, you know, like the best offensive lineman of the year, I think deserves to be.
Do you think Mailata is the best offensive lineman in all of football?
I think that he probably played better than now. Like, you know, Trent Williams didn't play this year,
play
you know.
a ton. Yeah.
You know, so I don't know. I mean, you could go through and you could say, I don't know.
I mean, like Christian Darrisaw was playing great. Then he got hurt.
Rashawn Slater had a really good year.
Joe Tooney.
Oh, you're right.
Joe
that would
Tooney
be
would have been a good
too.
pick. Would have been a good pick because, like, you think about value, like kicking out to left tackle, being able to shore that up.
You know what? I'm going to do that.
Joe Tooney for MVP.
Yeah. All right. I just did it.
Would it piss him off if I voted for him too? So then, like, Joe Tooney has 2 votes.
You know what though? I think this is a
maybe I'll just submit it and see what he says, and then we can circle back on the on next week's podcast on this.
And then we'll get it'll be it's always fun to you can find out who listens to your podcast based on talking about someone on your podcast, and then if they get back to you, you know that they're listening to it.
Well, how many people do we have voting? Like, I mean, I think the MVP thing's split up enough where 2 votes might carry the day.
I mean, there's the MMQB panel right now is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 strong. Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, like, you could at least like get a tie if like Lamar and Josh Allen and Saquon, if they're all splitting up votes, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna work on Matt Verderame as well, because he's a Chiefs fan. So I'm gonna see if I can get him to vote for Joe Tooney.
Yeah, I would say we should just have everybody vote for Joe Tooney, and like everybody but Mitch, and then like just see his reaction when all the ballots come in. Can we organize that? I'm like all for that.
Well, Mirrored NFL Network.
Overwhelming. The MMQB's overwhelming choice for MVP.
It's Joe Tooney. I used to do that at NFL Network. So we used to have all the writers on the content side. There's like 30 of us or whatever, and we would vote on the power rankings. Mm-hmm. And you know, like your vote goes up against like very accomplished people like Gil Brandt, you know, like, or, you know, like people who have devoted their life to football. But like there'd be a week where, you know, I just thought like, you know, it was like Jack Del Rio's coaching the Raiders, and they're like 1-4, and I put them like 6th in the power rankings, and it just moved them up like 30 spots, and everyone's like, who the fuck is that? But yeah, so we you know, we have a good time with that. But all right, so let's get into I think we should run down Black Monday first, so that we appreciate you guys sticking with us. We did a later show today. It wasn't in your inbox first thing in the morning, because if we taped it at normal time, we have a flurry of information that's going on, and I still
would have
think
been dead by 10 a.m. if we didn't.
10 a.m. Yeah. And so I think you know, we'll see if there's anything left at this point. But let's run down what we know so far. The Giants are keeping Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll. The Dolphins are keeping Mike McDaniel and Chris Greer. The Colts are keeping Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen. Who are the other big stays?
The big stays. The Raiders are still like kind of in this weird like nowhere land, but their head coach said that he hadn't heard anything different. I believe he probably met with the owner already. I think he said he did, right? And then and was wearing a like unbelievable 90s Raiders starter jacket.
Wow. Okay. You know, that's something. It's interesting, right? Because, and we'll get into the other guys in a second here, but there's 2 different methods here. There's the Eagles method, where you just allow the smoke to clear, and then you're like, oh, we were never really interested in that. Like, that's why we didn't say
What are you
anything.
talking about?
Yeah, what are you guys talking about? Or there's the Colts and the Dolphins method, where it's like, oh, hey, we're not gonna fire these guys, and then your coach is like, wait, we were gonna get fired, you know? So there's two different ways to do it. It's sort of damned if you do, damned if you don't. Now, it would be a really
the team statement that somebody's staying is usually a bad sign for the next year,
right? And so we have a lot of team statement guys. You know, Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll were team statement guys. Like we said, Mike McDaniel, Chris Greer, and
Ballard and Steichen.
And Ballard and Steichen. And so you have these, like, it's almost like a 1-year warning kind of thing, where it's like, okay, you guys got a little bit of time left here. Let's see what we can do. And we'll break all those situations down. The replacements at this point, the Jaguars are keeping general manager Trent Baalke and letting go of head coach Doug Peterson.
Yep.
And
I'm sure you have a lot to say on that, as do I.
Yeah, we should tackle that. And what else am I missing, Albert?
We have the 3 existing ones: the Bears, the Jets,
the Jets, and the Saints,
and the Patriots,
and of course the Patriots. Which I mean, just kind of earth shattering, really, when you think about it. Letting go of Bill Belichick's hand.
I think that's the number, though. I think we're at 5 right now, right?
Yes.
and only one GM
so far.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Because
that could change.
And you know that too, right? A lot of GM contracts run through the draft. We've seen it where, Mike McCagnon did a Jets draft and then Joe Douglas came in. There have been situations like
Doug
that.
Whaley in Buffalo with Sean McDermott, and then he winds up, getting fired after the draft, and Brandon Beane comes in. So we've seen that before for sure. And we don't know who the coaches in those places are going to be, which informs the whole thing.
So let's start there, because I think, to me, and we can get to our biggest surprises and our biggest takeaways. Even though it's the Jaguars, and the Jaguars just kind of do Jaguar stuff. It's why they're the Jaguars. Holding on to Trent Baalke is fairly stunning to me, unless the plan is for Baalke to work through the draft and to help Shad Khan run the head coaching interviews, which is something that maybe Shad Khan just doesn't know how to do. It's a complicated process. Yes, you can hire search firms for that, and I believe they did. I believe the Jaguars have a search firm, or there's some sort of agency that's also helping them do that. But the fact that he's involved, at least in the right now, severely impacts the candidate pool.
100%.
Yeah.
And this isn't just, let's just be clear about this. Every one of these isn't the same. I don't think Elliott Wolf's scaring off too many people in New England, for example. You know what I mean? He's well-respected from a well-respected family. There may be people, there's a difference between, in some cases, somebody might come in and say, well, I need to bring my guy with him. No offense to the guy who's already here. Right. That's different than, I'm not even going to interview there because that guy's there, which I think already to some degree has existed. Now, you haven't heard it, but I think to some degree that I would just say on good authority that already does exist. They've already been turned down, for people coming in there and taking a look at their job. And look, that's the bed that Trent Baalke made. His reputation from San Francisco follows him. I would love for one of the Chargers reporters to ask Jim Harbaugh what he thinks about the circumstance down there, because I think he'd have some things to say. I look, it is what it is. He's had 2 general manager jobs. Both of them followed his boss getting fired, Scott McLuhan in 2010 in San Francisco, and Dave Caldwell in Jacksonville in 2020, I think, right? 2020. They were both sort of they both happened outside of the normal hiring schedule. It happened with the Niners, I believe, in April of that year, and then mid-season with the Jaguars. And Baalke then wound up surviving a coach who was fired in both cases, Mike Singletary in San Francisco, and Doug Marrone in Jacksonville, and then went on to survive multiple coaches being fired in both spots. So he survived after Singletary, survived Jim Harbaugh being fired, and survived Jim Tomsula being fired, then wound up getting fired with Chip Kelly. And in Jacksonville, he survived Urban Meyer getting fired and Doug Peterson getting fired. I'm almost at the point where I have to respect it. I mean, how in the world has he continued to survive over and over and over again? And I think you and I have talked about this, right? The Walker Little contract was the one where it's that's interesting.
Right.
You're allowed to give $15 million to a left tackle who has 5 starts. That sounds like a confirmation of a draft pick. And you know what a confirmation of draft pick signing is, right?
I mean, it's power, It's
so we've seen this trick with general managers in the past where
it's job security.
When a guy's in trouble, he'll sign his draft picks because the owner may not know better. It's confirmation that you got the pick right.
Right.
And so I think Tyson Campbell's a fine player, but they paid him a top of the league corner. Is he one? I don't know. They paid Walker Little he is a solid starting left tackle before they could have possibly even known whether he was or not.
Yeah.
So you have these contracts that they've given to people that they've drafted. I think part of the biggest problem the Jaguars have from a roster standpoint is they paid a lot of good players great money. Christian Kirk's a good example of that. And I don't know. I look at it, Conor, like, what has he done to make it so for an owner to feel so strongly about him that he's willing to drive a coach like a Ben Johnson or a Mike Vrabel away from his coaching search to keep him?
Yeah, it just doesn't like. And, so in fairness to Shad Khan, I suppose, I mean, he did meet with reporters on Monday. And the reason essentially was, hey, this is a complex process. And I feel like all my other aspects of the operation have gotten better. Analytics, player health and safety, all that kind of stuff has gotten better. So why would I throw the baby out with the bathwater? And the problem is, like, for example, Mike McDaniel comes into Miami, and all of a sudden, Stephen Ross is the best owner in the NFL to work for, and there's straight A's across the board in the NFL PA Player Survey. Dan Campbell comes into Detroit. All of a sudden, the Lions are one of the best organizations to work for. After coming, we did an MMQB poll. I think Robert Klemko did it when he used to work here, of the places that free agents would absolutely least want to go. It used to be Detroit. Used to be number one. Now they're the most popular destination in the NFL. Your tone setter is your head coach, and it always has been. And, GMs who think that they can be the voice of the building are oftentimes a disaster, and, and rarely do they work out. Right. And so I think it's one of these situations where, boy, do we got to be careful in this situation. And why would you drive away someone like Mike Vrabel? Why would you drive away someone like Ben Johnson? And,
I mean, there were a lot of people, Conor, you and I talked about this too, that thought Jacksonville was the Ben Johnson team.
I thought it was too.
I mean, like, I like they made a ton of sense if you can clear the decks and maybe bring in somebody like, Lance Newmark from Washington, who was with Ben for a bunch of years in Detroit, who like has been part of two rebuilds. Now you have like two guys who have an idea of the expectations that one another have for each other. You're not projecting what that relationship is going to be like because they already have a relationship. Like, why wouldn't you want that? And
makes no sense.
It's not like they're not going to be able to hire somebody, because they will. But why wouldn't you give yourself, in the situation the Jaguars are in, why wouldn't you give yourself a full complement of options on both sides of it? And, I mean, the Jets aren't exactly a model franchise right now, but they're keeping their options open. They're not married to a model. They're saying, like, let's go find a good person, whether that's the head coach or general manager, and build around that person. It's just baffling. It's baffling. And it makes you question how much Shad is really invested in the team.
Sure.
Doesn't live there. Like, he has other sports interests. He's not around a lot. Is this just the easier thing to do? Man. Is this just I don't want to work off of a blank slate. I want somebody else. I don't have time for this. Or is it, well, if we get this wrong again, then I can just point the finger at Trent?
Underdog is the best place to cash in on all your takes during the playoffs. Which players are going off and which ones are ice cold. With over 5 million happy players and $2 billion won, Underdog makes it fun and easy to cash in on all your favorite athletes' performances. With their Pick'em game, you could win up to 1,000 times your money just by choosing higher or lower on a player's stats, like yards, touchdowns, interceptions, and more. Underdog is the only pick'em platform that puts the power to cash out in your hands. Now you can either keep riding with your entry or tap the Win Now button to cash out whenever you want. Every dog deserves a second chance, and with Underdog Rescues, you can get your money back and receive a promo if an early injury causes your entry to lose. Now, I am not much of a pick'em expert, but a lot of my friends too, who are novices in this whole thing, say that Underdog is the best way to immediately get into the game. For example, this week, look at, hey, is Brock Bowers going to get higher or lower than 8 catches? Is Joe Mixon going to score more or less than 1 touchdown? These are great ways to get into the game, spice up the action a little bit, and make your weekend of watching football all the more enjoyable. And Underdog is the best place to play Pick'em. Download the app, sign up with promo code MMQB, and deposit now to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. That's promo code MMQB. You must be 18 years or older, 19 years or older in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 years or older in Colorado for some games, 21 years or older in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado for some games. If you're concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. And in New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-8778-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY to 467-369. For example, let's say that the Patriots do end up hiring Mike Vrabel.
Yep.
And that was kind of what everybody was at the time. It's like, oh God, Mike Vrabel's available. That wasn't expected. You guys should just go get him and pair him with Elliott Wolf. Well, no. We made the decision to go with Jerod Mayo, so we're going to go with it. A year later, well, it turns out that, Jerod Mayo wasn't the right guy for the job, so now I'm going to go get Mike Vrabel. And it's like, everyone's looking at Kraft and saying, well, if you were going to do that, why wouldn't you have just done it in the first place?
Right.
And I do think that some of that will come back to Shad Khan, but I think one of the benefits that he has of being the owner of the Jaguars, it really is the Jaguars. It's like one of the smaller fan bases in the NFL. Half of your fan base is on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean, and so you're not really people aren't coming to your facility every day to picket or complain, and so it's just kind of like, all right, we can just we can.
And
be
the other
place.
half is more worried about Florida's NIL.
Yeah.
So
what are we gonna do with Billy Napier?
Yeah.
Is Jacksonville and Gainesville?
Gotta keep DJ Lagway happy, huh?
Are Gainesville and Jacksonville remotely close to each other? I don't understand.
Yeah, I think it's an hour and a half. Because I've gone to Gainesville before where I flew into Jacksonville. I think it's about an hour and a half.
All right.
Because the one thing I do remember about that is if you go there, what everybody will warn you first is there's this county in Florida that's notorious for pulling people over speeding. I can get you the name of that county too, but I can't remember the name. I can't remember the name of it, but because you have to go down this country road to get from Jacksonville to Gainesville, and this country road that goes through this one county. This county is notorious for sitting there and catching people who aren't from there speeding. So be aware.
Just so you know, by the way, there's a little bit of breaking news as we're doing this. Bill Belichick is on Twitter now.
Yes, he is.
He only has 9,446
He had some thoughts
followers.
in the Patriots situation.
He what?
He had some thoughts in the Patriots situation.
If you read between the lines, so let's talk about the Patriots now. Bill Belichick was on the Pat McAfee show, and in the very Bill Belichick way, basically intimated that he didn't know who was in charge of making the decisions there.
When he named Robin Glazer, which is a third rail thing for the Crafts, which I kind of I have. There's been a lot of score settling that 100%. Bill Belichick has executed on all of his media platforms.
But that's why you get media platforms. I mean,
right.
Whatever, man. I was picked on in high school. That's why I get media platform. No, just kidding. But it's one of those situations where I think, to me, this is, Robert Kraft is going to be able to erase the Jerod Mayo thing quickly if he brings in Mike Vrabel. But the Mayo situation, that was his power grab, right? Because everybody did something in the wake of the breakup of the dynasty. And Bill Belichick went to the media, and now he's at North Carolina, which is not really a big middle finger. But, I think Robert Kraft went out and got his candidate. Tom Brady went out and won his own Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And, but this was Kraft's way of saying, I had a big part in this too. Look at how clairvoyant I am. Look at how observant I am. I noticed all these great things in Jerod Mayo. And then he set him up with the worst roster in football and fired him after a season. And so that's a big knock on him. That
it looks like a clown show. I mean, and he set himself up too. I mean, to compare identifying Jerod Mayo to finding his two wives, to finding Myra and Dana. I mean, you put yourself in a tough spot. You say something like that, it's really hard to take that back. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, can I really trust what this guy is saying anymore when he says something like that? That's the sort of thing that erodes your credibility, and you take a hit if you turn around and fire a guy a year after saying that. And I do give him some credit for look, if you were that sure about it and you were willing to take that hit to your own credibility, then, I think then you deserve some credit on one end for it. But I think the reality of the whole thing is, Connor, they had a guy in Bill Belichick who was capable of doing about 15 people's jobs. And I remember like doing this big project at NFL Network. We called it Who's Really in Charge. And I had to go in and figure out the reporting structure and who had say over what in every organization in the league. It was hard to do. I learned a lot doing it. And then I remember going back to people who had worked in these places and asking them, okay, like, how do I best describe this? And I remember there's one person I talked to who wound up becoming a GM about the Patriots. He had worked there and he said, they don't have a structure. They have a person. It's like Bill is an alien. There are, you have like everybody, that everything's getting done, but nobody has any idea how everything's getting done because Bill is somehow getting everything taken care of. And so if that's the way your place worked and you were intentionally small because that person wanted it that way, wanted it insular, wanted to have his fingerprints on everything, well, then you should have known that by pulling that one person out, the whole thing could fall apart, especially if you're putting in a 36-year-old who has no even coordinator experience, let alone head coaching experience. So I don't know. I look at this whole thing and, there's a lot of egg on Kraft's face. I think that if they go and hit reset and do the same thing and keep their same structure and just drop Vrabel into it, they'll fail. I think if they take a hard look at football operations, they take a hard look at what the rest of the league is doing. They restructure some of the stuff that they're doing. They build out their personnel department. They give some more support to people in and around scouting and coaching. That's where they'll give themselves a chance, whether it's Mike Vrabel or somebody else. And so I think what the Mayo thing should prove to them is that they have a long way to go as a football operation and that their issues over the last few years weren't a one-person problem. It wasn't pull Bill Belichick out of the equation and all of a sudden everything will be fixed. You basically had a problem there that you made much worse by not replacing every role that Bill Belichick was filling. And so I think this is time for them. And I think they've already started some of this and building some things out, but this is time for them to take a hard look at everything they do from a football standpoint, with the head coach hiring being a part of that.
Let's go to the Giants quickly. This is, it was snowing today in New Jersey, so thank God no clown could fly a plane over the stadium, which is good, and voice their opinion on this.
Those are people who've invested into the team. Their investment into to getting a message across the Maras is notable, don't you think?
Well, now that I know it only costs like $2,500, I'm like, all right, I'm not dismissing $2,500. It's a lot of money, but like, there's incredibly rich people in New Jersey.
I would have thought it would have been more than that.
Right? Wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. But I think, living in this area, driving around today, I had to go minivan shopping, which was pretty intimidating. But while I was doing that, you
hear your very first minivan.
Yeah. Yeah.
What made you guys make the switch?
Well, going from 2 to 3. And then
we have 5 is an awkward number of people. We've been in that boat for 5 years. So,
and just, the way that my kids operate, having a clear center aisle, like an airplane style thing, is just, it makes more sense for them.
So we have that in the Tahoe where we have the captain's chairs.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah, they have no spatial awareness. So just clearing the runway for them to be able to do that makes sense. But you're listening to it on the radio. And, I've kind of had enough of, I think it's just a frustration with living here. I'm sure it's like every market, but like Giants fans calling in and like moaning, like they have like stomach ulcers, like this franchise is tearing me apart. You won 2 goddamn Super Bowls since 2007.
Oh, try living here.
Yeah.
You won like 6 Super Bowls like 5 minutes ago here.
It's just like, this team just makes me sick. They make you sick? Like, can you imagine being a fan of like the Browns?
I wonder if Lions fans are going to be like that after the Dan Campbell era is over. If they're going to be spoiled that quick,
And I think Nick Saban, was has had some good words on this, and Dabo Swinney too. It's like, what is wrong with you people?
I say that, and yet I'm the guy who on Saturday afternoons I'm like day drinking and like benching teenagers and firing college coaches. So.
Well, we'll see you in the finals, by the way, once Notre Dame smokes Penn State.
We will.
So hopefully that's in the decks. But my point here is like Brian Daboll was coach of the year in 2022, and everyone was like, "This is great." He was so good at his job that he got Daniel Jones a second contract. The guy who hired him was like, "Hey, this is a good idea. We're going to do it." So as the guy who has the job, you can't be like, "No, I don't want Daniel Jones." And also 2022 was the worst quarterback draft since like the Christian Ponder year, right? So you couldn't get one. So in the next year, it's like, well, we need to win because we won in 2022. So they win meaningless games down the stretch with Tommy DeVito and put yourself out of the so, all
You know
of
what
this,
it kind of reminds me of?
What?
Giants people won't like hearing this. The Todd Bowles Jets.
Yeah.
Where that first year they went 10-6
with Ryan
and they brought back Fitz. Love you, Fitz, but they brought back Fitz, and the owner was basically like, "No, we need to win now. We won 10 games. We're right there. We're right on the doorstep." And they told, and I know for a fact, people in that building told him like, this was sort of like, this is a lot of players who are kind of at the end, and like. Woody, we got to be really careful about this. Like it may not work out this way again the next year based on where some of these guys are in their careers. And they forged ahead. And I believe that would have been 2016, right? Is that right? 2016.
Yeah.
They went for it. And then it collapsed as some people in the organization said it would. And then 17 was like the tank for the quarterback year, and they all got fired after 18.
The tank for the quarterback year, and then they ended up with they took Hackenberg the year before they tanked for the quarterback.
Right. So, but that sort of like reminds me a little bit of it. You know what I mean? Like they actually had a better record that year than the Giants. Giants made the playoffs, but the Jets were 10-6. I think the Giants were 9-6-1. Right. So, like I'm with you. I think the Giants. I'm going to give John Mara some credit here. Like,
yeah,
I think like. The reality was what they inherited was really, really not good.
Disastrous.
And those guys made it work. And I think they've come out of that now with like a core of players in Andrew Thomas, Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, Dexter Lawrence, Malik Neighbors. You can build around that. You know what I mean? Like they have really good players who play premium positions who are young. And I know like, but the quarterback is, one of those, well, how is the play otherwise, Mrs. Lincoln type of things. But I mean, I like if you can find a way to get to level ground at quarterback where you have like good quarterback, like even if it's like a bridge, I think you should be able to contend next year.
The only quarterback that Brian Daboll worked with this year that had a positive completion percentage over expectation was Tommy DeVito. I mean,
it all comes back to Tommy DeVito.
Cannot. Like, and I think you and I are in lockstep on this. If Kirk Cousins, because Kirk Cousins this year is not healthy, okay? Yep. And if Kirk Cousins comes back next season, even remotely a little more mobile than this year, that Giants team with a quarterback, a capable quarterback like that, and a kicker who's going to
really shake it up.
Who? Aaron Rodgers?
Aaron Rodgers.
I mean, 28 touchdowns and 11 picks. Do you know what? The Giants would have fallen over themselves for that.
I mean,
Russell Wilson.
Is it the craziest idea? Like that it, like, hey, like we'll draft one and we'll bring in Aaron Rodgers for a year.
You get Jalen Milroe and you sit him behind.
Yeah, whatever. I mean, like figure it out, but like, I don't know. I don't think it's the craziest idea in the world. Like say Drew Aller comes out, right? Can you get Drew Aller at the top of the second round, who's wildly talented, who he's somebody I've watched where I'm like, he does not look very well coached at this point. He's kind of like not Drake. He's not as talented as Drake May, but he's got that Drake May thing where he's sort of all over the place.
Right.
You know what I mean? But you watch him play and you're like, there's something there between the size and the arm strength. So maybe you get somebody like that in the second round who you can work with for a year and bring in Aaron Rodgers and sit him.
Do you know that
Not
Drew
Rodgers,
Aller,
sit Aller. Yeah.
you know that Drew Aller is a park and tourism management major at Penn State?
That sounds like a football player major right there.
It sounds like he's putting a lot of time into the game plan.
Tell you what, like we had a lot of football players in the School of Communications at Ohio State. Had some football players in my classes.
I went to Syracuse and we had a star.
Yeah, your School of Communications, no joke. So
well, the communications school is no joke, but we didn't often have a lot of football players in the School of Communications or basketball players for that matter. Although I think Donovan McNabb is a Newhouse grad.
That's right. Yeah,
go Donovan.
Ohio
McNabb.
State had a lot of football players in the School of Communications, along with me.
But there was a star basketball player we had named Eric Devendorf, and I don't know if you remember Eric Devendorf, like all-time villain, like 3-point shooter kind of guy. But he, there was one class that was famous for only doing pop quizzes and pop tests, and those were the only days that Eric happened to grace the auditorium with his presence.
So he had like a little bit of a heads up there.
That was the story. I don't know.
That's great.
Sorry, Eric, if that's not true. I'm sure.
You know who actually was a recent star writer for the school newspaper at Ohio State and student in the School of Communications was Paris Johnson Jr.
Really?
The left tackle of the Cardinals. Yeah.
He's a hard-hitting columnist, huh?
Yeah. Apparently, like I don't know. I'm friendly with the advisors there at the school newspaper. I try to help out where I can, and she was telling me that Paris was a delight to work with.
I remember when I was covering Syracuse football, and we had made the big move after years of tragedy at the quarterback position to bring in Duke basketball player Greg Paulus to be the quarterback.
Yeah, I remember that. I do remember that. Yeah.
And
that sounded like a good idea at the time, though, because he was like a great athlete and all that. You know what I mean? Like,
it really did until he got benched halfway through the year for Ryan Nassib.
Sounded like it was a great idea until he started playing.
Ryan Nassib, who got coached up by Nathaniel Hackett. Wild times at Syracuse University, but remember being on
Ryan Nassib was once mocked in the top 10.
Yes,
it's a very popular mock draft.
And the Jets.
Marone was going to take Ryan Nassib with him to Buffalo.
God bless mock drafts and God bless America. But we were on a conference call with Greg Paulus, and he transferred from Duke to go to Newhouse, and I was like, "What are you going to major in?" And he was like, business journalism." That wasn't a major, wasn't a major at all. Wasn't even a program. I don't think it was a class. Maybe it was offered at the master's level that I wasn't privy to, but I'd been taking classes there for 4 years, and I was like, yeah, all right, well, rules are different.
That would be like the pipeline to CNBC or something like that.
I guess if it's just if that thing actually existed. But to put a bow on the Giants thing, it's just like you have to also take this thing from a 30,000 foot perspective, right? And if you're the Maras, what you ended up doing was you tried to squeeze everything out of the Eli Manning era and squeeze everything out of the Coughlin era and squeeze then everything really hard to get the McAdoo era to match the good parts of the Coughlin era and to maximize the end of the Manning era. And what you ended up doing was a lot of bad contracts in free agency, a lot of misses in the draft. And then you started missing in the draft. And then what the Giants is, they pivoted to quote unquote, like sure things, right? We're going to draft productive players from college, guys who were team captains. None of those guys ended up panning out either, and you get to this point where you have a barren roster, and then you hand it over to Dave Gettleman, who doesn't take a quarterback in a quarterback-rich draft, takes Saquon Barkley, and it's just like, there's these chaotic things that just keep happening over and over and over again. You can't do this again.
Maybe Sam Darnold would have been okay there.
Right?
Second overall. I'm not even talking about drafting Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson. Like if you had done the buy the book thing and just taken Sam Darnold, which it was the buy the book thing at the time, Darnold might have been okay there. I
agree. We have at this point, we talked about Jerod Mayo. We talked about the Jaguars. Cincinnati, the fall guy here is Lou Anarumo. I don't think that's necessarily right. I think Lou did a great job. That was a job that when Zach Taylor took it, Nobody else wanted that job. He came in and did a great job with that defense. I mean, Trey Hendrickson has, 17 sacks this year?
Second straight year for 17 and a half last year, 17 and a half this year. So it's 35 sacks in the regular season the last 2 years.
And Ryan Grubb out in Seattle, not unexpected.
Yeah.
I think that they're gonna conduct a little bit of a search there. At this
sounds
point,
to me like that one was more his offense just didn't translate to the pros.
No.
With the lack of commitment to the run game and play action, I think they felt like it sort of turned Geno into a sitting duck back there. So
let's play. At the moment, right now, we are to believe that Antonio Pierce is coming back. This is as we're recording this. I don't know. Mark Davis.
I'm not you got to be you always gotta be careful because Mark Davis could wake up tomorrow morning but yeah, it looks that way.
He might still be at PF Chang's. We don't even know if he knows that, maybe he doesn't know that today's the last day of the season. So maybe he's going to hop back in.
What I do know is that starter jacket was just stellar.
I know, you can't, and maybe it's like, what was it? There was like an episode of Boy Meets World about this, I think, where all of a sudden they were working in a mailroom, and I think Sean just decided to answer a phone and pretend like he was working there, and then all of a sudden he worked there. And so maybe if you're Antonio Pierce, you're just like, yeah, screw it. I'm just going to go do my press conference and be like, yeah, these are the things we're going to change, and then that's the slogan for next year. And so yeah, I got the plan ready. We're just going to go and hope that no one calls you on it. I don't know. I mean, it's better than anything else. I think it's too early. I think next week we're going to play a little team and coach association. We're very early in the hiring process right now. Even now, I mean, the Patriots still have to go through an entire cycle, an entire process before they can even hire Mike Vrabel. A lot has to go on there. So, I think it's, at this point, it's a little premature. But I do want to put a bow on this weekend by talking a little bit about Sunday. And really what that means is talking about Lions and Vikings.
Yep.
I think those teams are going to play each other again. I agree with Dan Campbell.
So was the line see in 2 weeks?
Yeah, he told Kevin O'Connell at midfield, "I'll see you in 2 weeks." And
now that actually would also require the Eagles winning and the Bucks winning, right?
Which
could very well happen, right?
Yeah,
right. So because they would have to be, for people who don't know, the Vikings would have to be the lowest remaining seed to play Detroit in the divisional round, right? So that would require the Bucks advancing and the Eagles advancing against the Commanders and the who do the Eagles play?
The Eagles play the Packers.
Packers, yeah.
Yep.
So possible, definitely. Probable.
Okay, so we should, just right before we get into that, just give you guys a look at the playoff bracket. So over on the AFC side, we have Bills, Broncos. We have Steelers, Ravens for like the 90th time this year. And we have Chargers, Texans. Chargers, Texans is the worst game. Chargers are going to win that game by 3 touchdowns.
Did you see the Texans fact that
they've never not played at 3:30 on Saturday?
It's terrible. Like, just like, that's the thing is too, it's like, it's not a small market. You know what I mean? Like Houston's what, a top 10 market, right?
I guess. I mean, they need to start acting like it, but
they need some more juice for sure.
You know what it is though?
And CJ could eventually give them that juice.
You know what I wrote? It's the uniforms.
Is it?
The Texans uniforms look like a Tommy Hilfiger polo. Like it's just.
I actually think the new ones are an improvement.
They need to go. I think they need to start all over. New colors,
right?
Everything. Like really, you know what it is? Because it's Texas and it's university tech. Like maybe lean into orange. Like really get into explore orange.
I do like the Bull logo though.
Like co-op the orange from the Browns, take it away from the Browns because they're not doing anything with it. The Buccaneers aren't doing anything with orange. They don't deserve it.
Orange and what then?
I don't know.
No, that'd be Bengali.
When I was at Syracuse, the chancellor changed the school colors from orange and blue to orange and burnt orange.
Really? A two-tone?
Yeah, just a two. We're just going to be orange and oranger, which is, that's a thought. So on the NFC side, we have Packers and we have Eagles. We have Commanders and Bucks, and we have Vikings and Rams, and then we have the Lions as the 1 seed taking the bye. So for me, I mean, that game last night, I think if you play that again on a neutral field or whatever, if you just play those two teams again, it looks completely different. It looks completely different. I don't think that, we're to say that for some reason that just because this happens that the Lions are the better team. I think the Lions gambled on a defensive game plan that hit. I think Aaron Glenn is definitely getting a head coaching job after that. But how many times can you do that? Because it does surprise people.
I mean, you got to give him credit, like to put Amik Robertson on Justin Jefferson and trust him there. I know he had help, but that worked out for them. They trusted the guys up front without Aiden Hutchinson, without Aleem McNeil to stop the run with a light box. They were able to do that, and that gave that basically gave Aaron Glenn the math to take care of the rest, where they could pressure, they could make sure they were taken care of on the back end. And give them credit too. I mean, they knocked Sam Darnold around a bunch, which I don't think anybody thought they were going to be able to do, because they were able to do so much on the back end with the movable pieces that he has back there. Like that's one of the things I think they don't get enough credit for is they've got all of these guys. Melifonwu, obviously Brian Branch is a huge part of that. Terry and Arnold is capable of playing all over the secondary. They've got so many versatile pieces that they can mess with back there. I mean, Aaron Glenn did a great job. My takeaway is like, that Lions team is borderline indestructible. You know what I mean? Like they're just so deep and balanced, and like that doesn't mean you can't beat them, but like I don't know at this point. I mean, other than the quarterback, like I don't know what injury would do them in. Like they really feel like a sort of team that like they're so balanced across the board that they can kind of take whatever hit that comes to them.
It reminded me a lot of when the Seahawks had the Legion of Boom year, and they were basically, this team goes prime time and hits the playoffs, and their gamble is like, well, they're not going to call pass interference on every play. And, you press at the line, and so a lot of that stuff is legal in the first 5 yards. Yep. But like you go back and you rewatch it, which I did last night after the game. I went back and I watched it again. The violence at the line of scrimmage from the Lions defense was unbelievable. And it was a line drawn in the sand. Now, that's why I think things can change the second time, because if you do that to Justin Jefferson, who is maybe the biggest alpha wide receiver in the NFL, he's going to come back and punch you in the solar plexus. So,
And getting Alex Anzalone back, I think, was a really big deal for them too.
Did you like the Alex Anzalone quote?
What was it?
So he tweeted or Instagrammed a photo of his massive dog scar. Or his dog is in the punchline of this, so hold on, that's why I messed it up. But he Instagrammed a picture of a massive scar that's all stitched up, and then
is it from like the plate in his forearm or something like that?
Yeah, there's a plate in his forearm, and so he posted, "If you're gonna be a dog, you have to do dog shit."
It's pretty good.
It's like the most Dan Campbell thing ever. And I'll leave you with this. So we did our preseason cover story on the Lions. Hold on. I think I have one here. Look at that. Always handy.
There it is.
The Lions, we intimated they were going to the Super Bowl. I think that's been a good pick.
A lot better than my San Francisco Cincinnati pick, that's for sure.
I think I had Lions Chiefs, which is, I feel good about that right now.
Yeah.
But
the 2-1 seeds, it's not bad.
Alex Anzalone said to me, when I was coming here to Detroit, you have all these options in free agency, and a team like the Chiefs, it's like, well, I'm going there to do what? I'm not really helping. I'm just kind of there. And he's like, if I come to Detroit, I'm part of something special. And lo and behold, one of the most important players on a team that is just motoring through the playoffs. So very exciting. We will, like I said, first look at some of these matchups with Matt Verderame and Gilberto on Thursday, and then we'll be back to recap Wild Card Weekend. Holy smokes, I can't believe we're saying that on Monday. Thank you guys for being patient. Like I said, crazy day, but we'll be back later next week. And as always, please, SI.com. Please, you can find us on YouTube. Leave comments on our YouTube channel. Leave questions for us there. Rate and review us on Apple. It helps other people find the show. And, check us out. Follow us on social media. We're posting constantly. Some say too much. But that's how it is this time of year. So thanks everybody, and we'll see you soon.